And we are continuing our coverage of the Texas Hill Country flooding disaster now 1 week later. Tonight, we know 96 people have been killed. Currently, 161 remain missing. In all across Texas, 120 have been killed. And to give you a bit of more perspective as far as what it is that these search and recovery crews are up against, we're being told that, in fact, it is a 200-mile stretch of the Guadalupe River all the way from Hunt, all the way down to Canyon Lake that we're looking at here. In fact, we heard from Ingram volunteer, it was going to be volunteers, it was going to be the fire department, and they told us for them specifically, they're going to be focusing on a particular 8-mile stretch. And within that 8-mile stretch that they're focusing on, they're telling us that these piles of debris, in some cases 20 to 30 feet high, and they tell us within those piles of debris are vehicles, are RVs, you name it, it is in there. Unfortunately, that is part of the reason they are out there. They are still trying to find those 161 people who are missing in this immediate area. And again, what you're taking right now, a live look at, is going to be Air Force One after landing there at Kelly Field. We are anticipating moments from now seeing the president and as well who he will be greeted by there at the tarmac. But again, this meeting, we are anticipating the governor. We are expecting Senator Ted Cruz, John Cornyn as well. The last ad most recently was going to be the Ag Commissioner, Sid Miller, as well. We would anticipate he will be meeting with Kerr County, Mayor of Kerrville, local, state, federal. They will all be here and on the ground to see the damage for themselves and assess it, as well as, just as importantly, meet with those families who have been impacted by this devastation out here. It was a roof. We couldn't tell if it was a tractor trailer, or we couldn't tell if it was a tow truck that was coming by. But, you know, one of the things that we had seen, that we had said from the very beginning, as we drove in, seeing all of these organizations that are stepping up and outpouring of support, we said it and we'll say it again, that even though we're seeing the worst in Mother Nature and what she left behind, on the flip side of that, we are now seeing the best in humanity, and that's everybody coming together to help in this process. Since last week, we have been seeing stories of folks who had rescued folks, and you know, it's been eye-opening to get those accounts there on Riverfront Road in Kerrville specifically, where one home was wiped off of its foundation, another slamming into another. We had heard stories from folks there who had the same story, had woken up in the middle of the night to screams, others seeing flashes of lights. In one instance, they were able to grab onto another. Sadly, some of their other neighbors didn't make it. But when we heard those stories as well of folks saving one another, we are still hearing, in fact, that's the video that we're talking about right there. We're still hearing those stories. And again, you see that the water level had risen, not just up to those homes there along the banks of the Guadalupe, but it had crossed the street, and you could see the debris line. That's that house right there. You can see the debris line just on the other side of the fence and the other side of the street. Gives you an idea of just how high the water was. But then in that other video that you saw how quickly, there you go, you saw how quickly it was moving. And this is sadly what neighbors were up against. I mean, it came in, it ripped things apart, and it was do what you can to save yourselves. And we are hearing those stories, and it's truly moving. We just saw a story yesterday. Karina Hollingsworth brought us that story. It was of a gentleman who thankfully is alive today, but had mentioned that he was dealing with the loss of his wife some months past. But he said in his interview that he's not sure that she would have been able to have survived this had she lived through this. He got emotional at times, understandably so, but again, he was thankful to be alive today. But it's a lot to take in, a lot to process. Lieutenant Governor there mentioning they do have the best of the best. We can tell you that between 400 to 500 right now, boots are on the ground, and that's going to be rescue crews, that's going to be search and rescue teams, not just from the state level, but you're talking federal. You've got folks here from all over. And as we've said before, anytime we see devastation like this, it's not just that one community that's impacted. It's all of us. It may be an hour to 2 hours away, but they are our neighbors, and because of that, we are offering help and assistance, and that's why you see so many different agencies descending there in that area that's been impacted, because they're working round the clock to save as many people as they can. But right now, we are still watching some of the rescues that are underway. We do know that rescue crews are still out there. You can hear in many of the live shots that we go to from some of our reporters who are there along the river. You can hear the choppers overhead, and the reporters take a moment and pause and look up to see that those are choppers that are searching for people who perhaps may still be stranded, whether it be in trees, whether it may be in a higher area. They are actively out there searching. They will continue to be out there searching. Just because, as I mentioned before, just because the sun goes down does not mean that their efforts are up. They will continue to search, and the Lieutenant Governor had mentioned all the agencies that they have. There are some 400 to 500
boots on the ground. They are working in shifts to make sure that just as one crew is done with their efforts, another crew picks up the effort. So those search and rescue efforts will continue. We do see more buses. Presumably the buses that the Lieutenant Governor had mentioned were on standby once these children were rescued. And we are hoping and praying that those are buses full of children who have been rescued. So you're looking at Ingram High School. We know the reunification center is set up at Ingram Elementary. We do know that there's another one set up at Arcadia High. In terms of shelters, you've got some scattered about in Kerrville, Shriner University, Walmart, First United Methodist. In Comfort, you've got Comfort High School, the Lobby Coffee Shop, Comfort Emmanuel Lutheran Church as well, as we're taking another live look at some of the choppers that are there in the area. Point to make here is what the Lieutenant Governor said earlier. As we see some of these rescues underway right now, he said that they've got plenty of air rescue. They don't need any more assistance. They've got 14 choppers that are in the air, 9 rescue teams. They're searching for folks in the chopper by way of boat, on the ground as well, to places that they can get to. So, you know, they were mentioning that they don't need any more air assistance. They don't need any drones or anything like that. And we're also stressing to folks that you know, be mindful of that. Don't send up your drone to try to get video of any of the devastation.
Don't do that.
That's puts folks in harm's way.
I'm Jonathan Martinez. We are bringing you special coverage live from Kerrville tonight, where state lawmakers are hearing from the public right now. It is actually all part of a special session committee meeting on the deadly floods that sadly killed more than 130 people roughly a month ago. This hearing includes nearly 24 speakers on 5 separate panels, and we can tell you that it's been taking place all day. In fact, it is still underway right now as lawmakers are hearing from the public right now. At times, we can tell you things got pretty heated. Lawmakers asking direct questions to both city and county leaders about what happened the day of the flooding. What was the response like? What about the warning systems? What needs to be done to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again? In fact, there were explosive moments during today's testimony when state lawmakers started digging into the timeline of events during the flooding emergency. Houston area State Rep Ann Johnson took issue with Kerr County officials on why it took so long to get the code red alert out to the public.
You said at 3:30.
And we do have a team of reporters covering today's hearing. The News 4i team's Jordan Elder joins us live here in Kerrville. In fact, she was inside the building as this hearing was taking place. She's joining us now with some of the big takeaways. Jordan. All right, Jordan, thanks a lot for that update. She will be joining us a bit later in this show. Since the flooding tragedy, we've heard countless stories of people who survived the floodwaters. One of the hardest hit areas in Kerr County was at the Camp Mystic area just south of Hunt. A woman who lives not far from there giving testimony at today's hearing. Lori Lowe described the frantic moments when she realized that she and her husband, they had to evacuate.
4:05, we hurriedly self-evacuated in my husband's large pickup.
And she was just one of many people who spoke at today's hearing. News 4 San Antonio's Taylor Wardenby joins us also live here in Kerrville with more on what others had to say. Taylor, good evening. Now, this committee hearing still going on as we speak. In fact, it's been happening since 9:30 this morning. We are now well into hour 8. Right now, they are hearing more comments from the public. We are streaming this live on our website along with our News 4 YouTube page, and you can go there right now by scanning that QR code on your screen. For now, let's send it back into the studio with Chief Meteorologist Chris Huchan. All right, our coverage of today's joint hearing continues live here in Kerrville. I do want to bring in Jordan Elder right now, because Jordan, you were inside the room as this testimony. It's still going on, by the way, right now. Perhaps you're watching it. Set the scene. What was the mood like in there?
It was very tense at first. Obviously, these are people who have waited a long time to come tell lawmakers how they're feeling.
So a lot of questions, a lot of things being discussed. I know one of the things, one of the highlights, if you will, is what can be done to prevent something like this from happening again. And I think the follow-up question that generally a lot of people were asking from the public is, how soon can we get that? How soon will we know those answers, though?
That's going to be up to the lawmakers.
Full recap coming up for you tonight at 10 o'clock. For now, let's go ahead and send things back over to Chief Meteorologist Chris Huchan in the studio. Hey, Such. And we are coming on air because we are following a developing situation in Dilley, Texas. That's roughly an hour southwest of San Antonio right now. That's where an ICE detention facility. Currently, we know that there are protesters out there along with members of ICE. We do understand that members of Congress were planning to take a tour there. Let's go ahead and get out live to our reporter, Taylor Wardenby, who's joining us live out there as there was a bit of a dust-up out there. Taylor, what do we know? The woman there that was describing the scene to Taylor, saying that in her opinion, in her mind, she didn't feel as if it was tear gas that was deployed. She said that perhaps she felt it was something else, as people, as she described it, immediately began choking and couldn't breathe. Of course, Taylor, our reporter there on the scene, also describing the same.
We do know that this is going to be the detention facility down in Dilley, Texas, roughly about an hour southwest of San Antonio. I believe, Taylor, we do have you back on the air with us. Let us know what it was like moments before that chemical or that tear gas was deployed. Was there a skirmish? Was there pushing and shoving? Was there a warning before it was deployed? All right, Taylor, thanks a lot for that. We'll check in with you in just a moment. But again, to set the scene for folks who are just joining us right now, a bit of a skirmish there in Dilley at one of the detention facilities where we do know that lawmakers were planning to take a tour. This is the same facility that a 5-year-old, along with his father, who are from Ecuador, well, they were picked up while in Minnesota and brought to that detention facility. We had just reported last night that there were some indications that perhaps there were some inhumane conditions in there, moldy food, possibly worms in the food, things of that nature that were being reported. That so far has not been confirmed, but that is one of the reasons that is why Democratic lawmakers were planning to take a tour of that facility. In conjunction with that, we do know that there were vigils that were planned not too far down the way, and that's what Taylor was describing, that some of these folks had come from other gatherings, if you will, and folks who are protesting right now the ongoing immigration debate that rages on throughout the entire country. We know right now that the focal point had been in Minnesota, as it remains, but thus far it is now in our backyard, just down the road in Dilley, where a lot of people are demonstrating. Again, if you're just joining us, the reason we're coming on the air is because we do know that DPS agents and others there at the detention facility did deploy some sort of chemical. Our Taylor Wharton, being the reporter on the scene there, describing it to us, saying that once it did hit the ground, it was difficult for them to breathe. It was difficult for them to see. They started to flush out their eyes, and that's some of what it is that we're seeing right now. Taylor describing DPS was warning the group that was there to get back. At one point, she did mention that there was possibly, again, we're waiting to see it for ourselves, possibly some pushing and shoving that had gone on, but that there were some warnings from the agents or DPS folks that were on scene there. We did hear from one of the other ladies just a short time ago who was part of that crowd, who said, in the quote there, is that she said, while they did say something in her mind, the quote was,